This is Firefox, and here's some of the markup in the page as an example. And you'll see that when I hover the mouse, I'll get a pop-up kind of tip menu, and there are rounded corners, and there's some opacity in that. And that same markup is working over here in Chrome. When I come over here to IE9, you'll see that the exact same markup will produce rounded corners, opacity, and uses add event listener. Let me show another example, alpha and opacity. Now, I'm not going to show, I'm just going to go ahead and show this here. You're just going to have to believe me, or you're just going to have to believe that it works in the other browsers, okay? So here's a nice image, and I'll fade out, and you'll see it'll fade out, and it'll fade in. And that same markup will work across browsers. Let me run a CSS test. So here's a site out on the web that offers a CSS3 selectors test. And what you'll see is that IE9 runs 578 out of their 578 tests correctly. This is an important thing for the kinds of development that you do every day. You just want that same markup, HTML, CSS script, to just work. All right, let me run one more example here, and it involves borders and radius. All right, so you'll see that I can see the markup that's in the page, and they're all pointed at the same HTML. And the first thing I'm going to do is animate the border widths in all of them, and that works pretty well. I'm going to cycle the border style. You'll see dotted, dotted, good. Dotted, dotted, a little different. Dotted and a little bit more different. Okay, now I'm going to animate the border radius. And we'll see even more differences. Now, this has got to be tremendously frustrating for developers. You're trying to use the same markup, and you can't. Then you take that same markup and you try to massage it a little bit, and then you're hoping for the same results, and you don't actually get it. That is super frustrating. Now, at the same time, some people use ACID3 as a shorthand for standard support. ACID3 is kind of interesting. It exercises about 100 details of about a dozen different technologies. Some of them are under construction, others less so. Why don't we bring up ACID3 and just run it in IE9. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that we will continue to make progress on the ACID3 test. The score will continue to go up as we make more of the markup that developers actually use work. Now, having looked at the ACID3 test, let's go back over here and take a look at these borders again. We are working with web standards bodies and browser vendors, other browser vendors, to minimize this same markup, different results that you have to work through every day. The practical, professional way to scale up here involves test suites. Test suites mean that developers can raise expectations. You can expect more from browsers. You can expect more from standards. This is the same pattern that we used in IE8 with the CSS 2.1 standard. And today, we announced the contribution of over 100 test cases to the W3C in order to help eliminate this kind of problem that you face every day. All right, let's talk about GPU-powered HTML5. HTML5 applications will push the limits of graphical richness and interactivity. IE9 will run HTML5 applications better by taking advantage of PC hardware through Windows. We call this GPU-powered HTML5. And to help me show this, I want to invite someone who knows a little bit about Windows to come out and demo. Please welcome Steven Sinofsky, President of the Windows Division at Microsoft.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here to have a chance to share some of the developments in Internet Explorer 9. And so what we want to show today a little bit is how we've built Internet Explorer 9 from the ground up on top of the Windows platform, in particular on top of the graphics aspects of the Windows platform. You know, this has been a long time in coming, and with Windows Vista and then with Windows 7, we made the transition to use a much richer graphics API and a much richer ecosystem around graphics. And so IE9 built from the ground up to take advantage of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to show a few demos of how this improved graphics really just makes the web perform better, less waiting, and also uses the same script and the same markup across all of these demos. So what we have running is Dean is going to use Chrome and Firefox, and I'm going to use the developer preview for Internet Explorer 9. And so you'll be able to see that side by side up there. So the first one we're going to just show you is a little bit of just some basic graphics. And so we're going to...
I just wanted to make sure everyone knows, because this is Vegas and sometimes games are rigged, that these are identical machines, identically configured pieces of hardware backstage. You'll also notice that there's a CPU meter up here in the upper right corner for those of you who like CPU meters. And I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, feel free. Okay. Always want to interrupt your boss on stage. And so... Now he's not going to talk at all for the rest of this. And so, okay, so these identical machines. So let's first look at some, we just call it rotating logos. And so these rotating logos are just a graphical element. And what these do is they're just rotating around. And what I can do is I'm going to move my mouse up and down really quick and zoom it around. Why don't you do that too, Dean?
I'm trying here, Stephen.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to increase. Also, up on the upper left, you can see a frame counter, and you can see I'm at 64 frames per second and 100 images. Dean is at 3 or 2 frames per second and 36 images.
It's kind of more like...
Why don't you keep increasing, because I'm going to keep going up and up and up.
I'm going to try another browser.
And so you can see this is just built on top of DirectX, and it's the same markup, the same code, the same script.
Okay.
And so just increase it. I'm at 38 with 256 images.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
So that gives you an idea of just how... Oh, I can also zoom in for fun, too. So, and I'll stop now because you're getting dizzy. So there you see, same markup, same code, running within the developer preview and in some other browsers as well. And it's, again, built from the ground up to take advantage of that.
Okay, well, HTML5 supports some new graphics formats. Now, these are interactive and programmable. They're just like HTML. In fact, here's some sample markup on the screen. And this looks a lot like HTML. They're angle brackets. You can program it with script and respond to events. Why don't we take a look at what this markup looks like in a browser?
Okay, so I'm going to click on this one here. Actually, Dean, do you remember him? I actually think you worked on him for a while.
I think I worked for you when I did.
Remember, we talked about being quiet a moment ago.
Right.
Here I are actually showing off our old pal, Clippy, who's actually being rendered in SVG. And so what I'm going to do in the developer preview for Internet Explorer 9, we have our new developer tools. And so, of course, these have been enhanced to take advantage of some of the new HTML5 constructs. And so I'm going to bring up the dev tools. And one of the neat things you can do is I'm going to click on this pointer, and then I'm going to click on an element of the SVG, and I'm immediately going to scroll to the proper place in the code. And I could go here and do things like maybe Clippy was out on the town last night, and he was really out on the town. And so you can see you're able to both use plain text to render these graphics, and then to use the debug tools to work within those graphics as well. Again, this is the kind of thing, the same markup, same code, same script across browsers.
Okay, why don't we try another example of SVG? Let's go over to falling balls. And what's interesting here, if you look at each one of these balls, you can kind of see through them. You can see where they overlap, the colors add up, because they've got opacity. They're somewhat transparent. Now, each of these balls is an SVG item. And there's actually a physics engine running in JavaScript. And when we click drop the balls, there'll be a lot of calculations in physics to make them bounce and go around. Shall we give this a try?
Sure. So we'll just go ahead on 3.
1, 2, 3. Yours are kind of going out of the box.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well, this is an interesting example of something we need to work through with HTML5 applications. We all know what the CSS should do, and we all kind of know what the SVG should do. But when they interact together, right now, those standards don't always